Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was recruited by Deadpool as his chaotic partner in battle. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The air in Hosa City was thick with a tension that had nothing to do with the summer humidity. It was a low, electric hum beneath the surface of daily life, a collective breath held by a city that felt a predator stalking its shadows. The news was full of it, whispers of the hero killer, Stain, a phantom of righteous fury who had already crippled one pro-hero and made others look over their shoulders. For Izuku Midoriya, interning under the legendary Gran Torino, this tension was both a terrifying reality and the ultimate training ground. Right now, however, the only thing stalking him was a diminutive old man with a jet propulsion quirk and the patience of a lit fuse. Sloppy boy! Your mind is a whirlwind of calculations, but your body is stuck in the mud. Gran Torino zipped past him, a yellow blur that ricocheted off the wall of the grimy alley they were using for their warm-up. A jet-powered kick, aimed not to injure but to sting, caught Deku squarely in the back. Gah! Izuku tumbled forward, skidding on the damp pavement. He caught himself before his face met the concrete, his hands scraping against the rough ground. One for all, full cowling flickered around him, green lightning crackling inconsistently like a faulty neon sign. He was holding it at 5%, the threshold he and All Might had determined was safe. But safe didn't mean stable. I'm trying, sir! He panted, pushing himself back to his feet. His mind was indeed a maelstrom. Okay, he's using the walls to build momentum. His trajectory is predictable for the first 1.2 seconds, but then he can adjust course mid-air. If I anticipate the rebound angle from that dumpster and use a 5% Delaware smash air force to create a pressure zone, I can disrupt his flight path and, whump. A yellow cape was suddenly draped over his head as Gran Torino landed silently on his shoulders, his weight surprisingly heavy. You're thinking again, Tashinori's boy. You're trying to solve a fight like it's a math problem. One for all isn't a formula to be solved. It's a fire in your belly. You let it out, you don't ask it for permission. Izuku grunted under the weight, his legs trembling. He could feel the raw power of one for all thrumming just beneath his skin, a roaring ocean trapped behind a dam of his own making. He was so terrified of breaking himself again, so desperate to live up to the impossible legacy of All Might, that he was strangling the very power he needed to master. Every move was hesitant, filtered through a dozen layers of analysis and fear. It feels like I'm holding a live grenade, Izuku confessed, his voice muffled by the cape. If I let go for even a second, Gran Torino hopped off, landing with a soft thud. He tugged his cape from Izuku's head and fixed him with a piercing glare. Then you learn how to juggle grenades. Stop trying to be All Might. He was a pillar, unmovable. You're not. You're a kid. Be a firecracker. Be unpredictable. Now again. Come at me. Izuku took a deep breath, trying to clear his head. Firecracker. Unpredictable. He crouched low, the green energy stabilizing for a moment as he focused. He pushed off, not aiming for a direct attack, but for the fire escape on the adjacent wall. His plan was to use his own ricochet strategy against his mentor. It was a good plan. A solid plan, and that was the problem. Gran Torino was already waiting for him at his destination, a wry grin on his face. The subsequent spar was a flurry of yellow and green, a master teaching a student that a perfectly executed plan is worthless against an opponent who wrote the textbook. 15 minutes later, Izuku was leaning against the graffiti-covered wall, breathing heavily, every muscle aching with a dull throb. Gran Torino, who hadn't even broken a sweat, was lecturing him while expertly devouring a taiyaki he'd seemingly produced from thin air. Your fundamentals are sound, but your application is rigid. You need to relax, let the power flow through you, not just to your limbs. Like this taiyaki filling. It's not forced into the fish, it fills the empty spaces naturally. You are the fish. One for all is the red bean paste. Be the delicious, power-filled fish, boy. Izuku blinked, trying to process the bizarre analogy. Be the taiyaki? Precisely. Now enough of this. Patrol time. Let's see if you can apply any of that in the real world. And try not to think so hard you give yourself a nosebleed. The real world, as it turned out, was about to get a lot weirder than a taiyaki-based metaphor. They were patrolling a commercial district just a few blocks from the main Hosa station when the screaming started. It wasn't the distant cry of a purse snatching. It was the sharp, terrified shriek of citizens caught in the crossfire of a full-blown villain attack. A storefront window 50 yards ahead shattered outwards, showering the street in a waterfall of glass. Four figures, clad in black tactical gear and chrome skull masks, burst from the high-end electronics store. They were armed not with typical street thug weaponry, but with military-grade tech. Two wielded crackling energy whips, while the other two carried large, shield-like devices that shimmered with a protective barrier. The chrome skulls! Gran Torino grunted, his demeanor shifting from eccentric mentor to hardened pro in an instant. Upstart tech thieves! They're fast, efficient, and they don't care about collateral damage. Kid, you take the two on the right. Focus on disabling their whips. I'll handle the shield bearers. Go, right. Deku's mind kicked into overdrive. Chrome skulls. Known for coordinated attacks. Whips are likely plasma-based, high temperature. My costume offers some heat resistance, but a direct hit would be bad. Their armor looks reinforced at the joints. A targeted 5% smash at the elbow or knee could disable them. I need to close the distance fast, avoid the arc of the whips, and he was so lost in his analysis that he nearly missed the first whip crack. The plasma lash sizzled through the air where his head had been a second ago, leaving a trail of burned ozone. He dodged, but it was a reactive, clumsy movement. The villains were pressing their advantage, working in tandem. One would swing high, forcing him to duck, while the other swung low, forcing him to leap. It was a deadly dance, and Izuku was 2 steps behind. He could see the openings, the brief moments when a villain would overextend or shift their weight, but hesitation was a poison in his veins. The fear of his own power made him a fraction of a second too slow. A whip caught his leg, and while his armored boot took the brunt of it, the heat and force sent him stumbling. Move, boy! Gran Torino's voice was a sharp command. The old hero was a whirlwind of motion, zipping around the shield bearers, his attacks too fast and erratic for them to track. He was the firecracker he wanted Izuku to be. Izuku grit his teeth, pushing through the pain. He activated full cowling again, the green lightning wrapping around him. No more thinking. Just react. Be the taiyaki. He lunged forward, aiming a kick at one of the villain's chest. It was a solid hit, sending the man staggering back. But his partner was ready, the second whip lashing out and wrapping around Izuku's outstretched leg. An agonizing, searing pain shot up his limb. The villain yanked, pulling Izuku off balance. He was on the ground, vulnerable, the other villain raising his whip for a finishing blow. He had failed. He was too slow, too weak, too much in his own head. And then, reality broke. It started not with a bang, but with a sound like 1,000 radio stations playing at once, grinding against each other. The air in the middle of the street, directly between the heroes and the villains, began to shimmer and distort, like heat haze on overdrive. Colors that had no name twisted into impossible shapes. The smell of ozone, burnt sugar, and old comic books filled the air. A tear appeared in the fabric of space-time. It wasn't a clean cut. It was a jagged, glitching wound of swirling red and black energy. From this chaotic maw, a figure was ejected with all the grace of a cannonball. He was a streak of red and black, landing in a heap of tangled limbs on the asphalt with a resounding crunch that should have signified at least a dozen broken bones. For a moment, there was a stunned silence. Heroes and villains alike stared at the crumpled man who had just fallen out of a hole in the universe. The figure groaned, a muffled sound from beneath his masked face. He pushed himself up, one limb at a time, his body making a series of unsettling popping and cracking noises. He stood, dusted off his tactical suit, and looked back at the rapidly closing portal. Okay, who replaced the reality-warping teleporter with a Japanese brand washing machine? The man's voice, filtered through his mask, was raspy and laced with an undercurrent of manic energy. I feel cleaner. And confused. And I think one of my kidneys is in my sock. He patted himself down, then stopped, taking in the scene around him. He saw the villains in their skull masks. He saw the tiny old man in the yellow suit. And he saw the green-clad teenager on the ground, clutching his injured leg. His white, expressive eye lenses widened comically. "Ooh, an anime episode!" he exclaimed, his voice filled with glee. He turned his head to look directly at a nearby brick wall, as if addressing an unseen audience. "Get a load of this, folks. Crossover episode. Hope it's not filler. The budget on those usually sucks." One of the chrome skulls, recovering from his shock, decided this new arrival was a threat. "Who the hell are you?" he snarled, raising his energy whip. The man in red and black struck a dramatic pose, one hand on his hip, the other pointing a finger gun at the villain. "I am the merc with a mouth. The regenerating degenerate. The scourge of the fourth wall. I am Captain Killypants." He paused. "No, wait, that's not right. Deadpool. That's it. I'm Deadpool. Nailed it. The dramatic entrance is half the battle. The other half is excessive violence." A little yellow box seemed to flicker into existence next to his head, visible only to him. The villain didn't care. He swung his whip. Die, freak! What happened next was a masterclass in lethal absurdity. Deadpool didn't dodge the whip so much as he simply let it hit him. The plasma lash struck him across the chest, burning a smoking black line into his suit. He staggered back dramatically. "Aha! You have found my one weakness. Mild to moderate chest pains." Then he straightened up, the wisp of smoke from his chest smelling faintly of bacon. "Just kidding." In a blur of motion, he drew two katanas from the scabbards on his back. They glinted in the sunlight as he charged forward, not with the grace of a samurai, but with the flailing, unpredictable energy of a cartoon character. The two whip-wielding villains attacked simultaneously, their plasma lashes crisscrossing in a deadly X. Deku, watching from the ground, saw the attack and his analytical mind screamed inescapable. Deadpool's solution was to slide on his knees, ducking under the whips, and use one katana to slice the legs out from under one villain while using the hilt of the other to smash into the second villain's jaw with a sickening crunch. He then sprang to his feet, spun around, and kicked the first villain's helmeted head so hard it audibly rang like a church bell. All of this took less than 3 seconds. Gran Torino, who had been about to intervene, stopped dead in his tracks, his jaw slack. He had seen hundreds of pro heroes in action. He had never seen anything like this. The two shield bearers charged forward to support their comrades. They raised their energy shields, forming a defensive wall. "You won't get past this," one shouted. "Is that a challenge?" Deadpool chirped. He sheathed his katanas and pulled out two heavily customized pistols. Deku's blood ran cold. "Guns? No hero uses guns. That's bang, 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 bang." The shots weren't aimed at the villains, but at the ground just in front of them. The bullets ricocheted off the pavement at impossible angles, singing past the shields and striking the villains in their unarmored kneecaps and elbows. It was a display of marksmanship that was both genius and utterly insane. Both men collapsed, screaming in pain, their shields clattering to the ground. Deadpool holstered his pistols and skipped over to them. "See? Non-lethal. Mostly. You might need a cane. And some therapy. Probably lots of therapy, after meeting me." The last conscious villain, the one Deadpool had kicked in the head, was trying to crawl away. Deadpool noticed and sighed dramatically. Oh, for crying out loud. The cleanup is always the worst part. He reached into one of his many pouches and pulled out a rubber chicken. It squeaked pathetically as he brandished it like a club. He sprinted towards the crawling man. The villain looked back in terror. Deku watched in horrified fascination. He was about to witness a man get bludgeoned to death with poultry, but Deadpool didn't hit him. Instead, he jammed the rubber chicken into the exhaust port of a nearby parked car, then kicked the car's side mirror with just enough force to knock it loose. The mirror flew through the air, spun like a frisbee, and hit the emergency fire alarm on a nearby building. A deafening alarm blared, and the building's sprinkler system activated, drenching the entire street. The water hit the villains' high-tech gear, and a shower of sparks erupted from their whips and armor. They convulsed for a moment before slumping into unconscious, smoking heaps. The whole elaborate sequence was a Rube Goldberg machine of cartoon violence. The street fell silent, save for the blaring alarm and the gentle hiss of water on hot pavement. Deadpool stood in the middle of it all, hands on his hips, the picture of triumph. Tada! And they said a liberal arts degree was useless. He turned, his gaze sweeping over the scene. His white lenses landed on Izuku, who was still on the ground, staring with wide, disbelieving eyes. The green lightning of full cowling had long since faded, forgotten in the chaos. Deadpool trotted over, his boots splashing in the puddles. He crouched down, tilting his head. Hey! Broccoli boy! You okay? You took a bit of a sizzle to the leg there. Izuku couldn't form words. His brain was struggling to categorize what he had just seen. It wasn't heroism. It was too brutal, too lethal in its intent, even if the result was technically non-lethal. But it wasn't villainy either. It was just chaos. Pure, weaponized chaos that had neutralized 4 dangerous villains in under a minute. He was horrified, but a small, analytical part of his brain was also undeniably, shamefully impressed. His movements, Izuku stammered, more to himself than to Deadpool. There was no pattern. No discernible fighting style. It was pure improvisation. He used the environment, the opponent's weaknesses, he even used a rubber chicken as a catalyst. It's brilliant. And terrifying. Deadpool's lenses squinted, as if he were smiling. See? The kid gets it. You've got a good head on your shoulders, Green Bean. A little too much mutter angsty stare, but we can work on that. He stood up and offered Izuku a hand. Izuku hesitated for a moment before taking it. Deadpool hauled him to his feet with surprising strength. Ahem. The sound came from Gran Torino, who had finally regained his composure. He strode forward, his face a thunderous mask of suspicion. Who are you? What is your affiliation? You are not a licensed hero. The use of deadly weapons and unregistered quirk-like abilities on civilians. Deadpool completely ignored him. His attention was solely on Izuku. He circled him, examining his costume, his freckled face, his wide green eyes. I like your style, kid, Deadpool declared, patting Izuku on the shoulder. Green and black, classic. A bit on the nose with the whole rabbit ear thing, but it works. You've got potential. I saw it in your eyes. You were all like I must analyze the strategic implications of his footwork, and I was all like I'm gonna shoot him in the shins. He threw an arm around Izuku's shoulders, pulling the stunned boy into a one-armed hug. Izuku stiffened, his entire body rigid with confusion and alarm. You know what? I've made a decision. It's a big day for you, kiddo. I'm officially adopting you as my sidekick. My partner in crime. Well, partner in justice. Crime-adjacent justice. We'll work out the branding later. Gran Torino's eye twitched. You will do no such thing. This boy is my student. Deadpool waved a dismissive hand at the old hero without even looking at him. Yeah, the wise old mentor character. I get it. You teach him the power of friendship and believing in himself. I'll teach him the power of explosives and witty banter. It'll be a well-rounded education. He squeezed Izuku's shoulder tighter. We need a team name. Something catchy. Deku and Deadpool. D squared? The Deadku? No, that's too morbid. I know. We'll call ourselves Dekupul. Izuku's face was a kaleidoscope of emotions, horror, bewilderment, and a strange, terrifying flicker of something he couldn't name. This man was insane. He was a killer, a mercenary, everything a hero wasn't supposed to be. And yet, he had saved him. He had won. I can't, Izuku managed to choke out. I'm training to be a hero. A real hero, like All Might. Deadpool's head snapped towards him. His lenses narrowed. For the first time, his manic energy seemed to focus into something sharp and almost serious. A hero like All Might, huh? The big guy who punches things and gives a thumbs up while the city pays for billions in property damage? That's a noble goal, kid. Real noble. He leaned in closer, his masked face just inches from Izuku's. His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. But let me ask you something, broccoli boy. When you were on the ground, With that sparky whip about to turn your face into a waffle, was your plan working? Were you about to save the day with the power of friendship and a well-thought-out thesis on your opponent's quirk? Izuku flinched. The words hit him harder than any physical blow. He had no answer. Deadpool leaned back, his cheerful demeanor returning in an instant. Didn't think so. Your way is noble. My way is effective. Together? We can be nobly effective. Or effectively noble. Look, we'll workshop the slogan. He released Izuku and struck another pose, pointing a finger at the sky. The first police sirens began to wail in the distance. Don't you worry, my little green protege, Deadpool announced to the world, his voice booming with unearned confidence. Your training with the old-timer is over. Your real education begins now. I'm going to teach you everything you need to know. We'll start with the basics. He looked back at Izuku, the white lenses of his mask crinkling in what could only be a terrifying grin. I'm going to teach you the art of the kill. He corrected himself quickly, the art of aggressively disabling bad guys for great justice. Yeah, that sounds much more heroic. And tax-deductible. The arrival of the Hosa City Police Department, followed swiftly by a handful of local pro-heroes, should have been the end of the bizarre incident. It should have been a moment of order reasserting itself over chaos. Instead, it was merely the beginning of a bureaucratic nightmare given form and a mouth that would not shut up. All right, folks, nothing to see here, move along. Deadpool announced, using his hands to shoo away the gathering crowd of onlookers. Just your friendly neighborhood, a trans-dimensional mercenary and his trusty green sidekick saving the day. Autographs are 500 yen, selfies are 1,000. No, I do not take American Express. A stern-looking police captain with a mustache that seemed to vibrate with indignation marched up to him. Sir, you are an unregistered vigilante who has utilized lethal force and... Lethal? Did you see anyone die? Deadpool cut in, placing a hand over his heart in mock offense. I call that aggressive sedation. It's a therapeutic technique. They'll wake up feeling very relaxed and possibly with a newfound respect for traffic laws. And I am not a vigilante. He slung his arm back around a deeply mortified Izuku Midoriya. I'm a consultant. He's my intern. It's all part of UA's new extreme experiential learning program. Isn't that right, Deku? It's just Deku, Izuku mumbled, his face the color of a ripe tomato. And no, that's not. Attaboy, kid! Sticking to the cover story. You'll make a fine secret agent. Before the police captain's mustache could achieve escape velocity from his face, a new figure arrived on the scene. Shota Aizawa, also known as the pro-hero Eraserhead, landed silently on the street, his binding weapon coiling around his shoulders and his eyes glowing a faint, menacing red. He had been called in by Gran Torino, his expression suggesting he would rather be napping in a nest of angry hornets. That's enough. Aizawa's voice was a low, tired drawl that carried an unmistakable edge of authority. You're coming with me. His gaze was locked on Deadpool, his erasure quirk fully active. Deadpool squinted at him. Whoa, check out Mr. Grumpy Pants. Tough day? Did the coffee machine break? Or are you just mad that your scarf is cooler than your entire personality? Aizawa didn't flinch. My quirk is active. I've erased yours. Surrender now. Deadpool blinked his masked lenses. He looked down at his hands, wiggled his fingers, and then looked back at Aizawa. Did you do it yet? I don't feel any different. Should I feel floaty? Tingly? Maybe a little gassy? Because I was feeling a little gassy before, but I think that was the chimichanga I ate in the last dimension. It did not agree with the laws of physics there. Aizawa's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. His quirk had never failed. When he looked at someone, he could feel a connection, a sense of their power that he could then sever. With this man in red, there was nothing. It was like trying to erase a drawing that was already on a whiteboard. There was no quirk to grab onto. Ooh, the writer is trying to explain my powers with in-universe logic. Cute. A yellow text box popped into existence beside Deadpool's head. Just tell him my power is being annoying. It's not a quirk, it's a lifestyle. What is he? Gran Torino zipped Aizawa's side, his expression grim. His abilities, they don't make sense. Doesn't matter, Aizawa growled, his patience worn to a microscopic thread. He launched his binding weapon. The carbon fiber cloth shot forward, wrapping around Deadpool in a tight, inescapable cocoon. It was a move that had subdued countless powerful villains. Deadpool looked down at the bindings. Ooh, Shibari. Kinky. But you're not really my type. Too much brooding, not enough spandex. With a casual flex, he drew one of his katanas, a move that should have been impossible with his arms pinned, and sliced cleanly through the binding weapon. The severed ends of the expensive material fell limply to the wet pavement. Aizawa stared at his ruined weapon, then at Deadpool, his expression shifting from tired annoyance to genuine, simmering rage. You know, Deadpool said, sheathing his sword with a shing, this has been great. Love what you've done with the city. Very destructible. But me and the kid have to get back to school. Big test tomorrow. Pop quiz on the ethics of excessive force. I think I'm gonna ace it. And with that, he grabbed Izuku's arm and began walking away, straight towards the arriving UA security car. The police were too stunned to move, and Aizawa was too busy processing the fact that someone had just treated his capture weapon like a roll of cheap toilet paper. The journey back to UA High was a surreal ordeal. Deadpool had somehow convinced the shell-shocked faculty that he was a foreign transfer instructor specializing in unconventional combat theory and that Izuku had been assigned to him for a mentorship evaluation. The lie was so audacious, so delivered with such unblinking confidence, that no one had the mental fortitude to question it. He simply walked through the vaunted UA gates as if he owned the place, chattering endlessly about the school's architecture. Seriously, a big glass uenda? A little on the nose, don't you think? It's like calling a hospital ouchie house. Subtlety, people. It's the secret ingredient to good branding. And paprika. Mostly paprika. Izuku just walked beside him, his head bowed, feeling the weight of 1,000 future detentions settling upon his soul. The new normal had begun. Training begins. The next day, Izuku found himself in Gym Gamma, the vast, customizable training facility. Its concrete pillars and modular blocks had been the site of countless grueling but constructive training sessions. Today, it was a stage for sheer madness. Alright, Broccoli Boy, welcome to your first lesson with Professor Poole, Deadpool announced, standing atop a 10-foot concrete pillar. He was juggling 3 objects. One was a large wrench, one was a full-wrapped chimichanga. The third was a live grenade. Izuku's eyes were wide with terror. That's a grenade. A real grenade. Relax, the pin is still in, Deadpool said cheerfully. Mostly. It's a little loose. Adds to the excitement. Today's lesson is on dodging. A hero has to be able to avoid anything and everything. Flying debris, laser blasts, angry landlords, unsolicited advice from your parents, the works. So, I'm going to throw things at you, and you're going to dodge. Simple. I don't think this is safe. Nonsense. It's educational. Now, first up. Deadpool wound up and hurled the wrench. It flew through the air with a deadly whistle. Izuku yelped, activating full cowling. Green lightning flared around him as he dove to the side. The wrench embedded itself in the wall with a loud thunk. Good. Quick reaction time. Deadpool praised. But you wasted energy. A simple sidestep would have sufficed. Remember, economy of motion. Now, for your next challenge. He tossed the chimichanga. It sailed through the air in a lazy arc. Izuku, expecting another high-velocity projectile, overcompensated and leaped 10 feet into the air, landing in a clumsy roll. The chimichanga splattered on the ground where he had been standing, its greasy contents painting a sad, brown smear on the concrete. Deadpool sighed dramatically. Oh, the humanity! A perfectly good chimichanga, wasted. You, sir, are a monster. That's a demerit. He then casually lobbed the grenade. Time seemed to slow down. Izuku saw the small, pineapple-shaped object tumbling through the air. He saw the loose pin glinting under the gym lights. Every instinct, every fiber of his being screamed at him. His body moved before his brain could issue the command. Full cowling flared to an unprecedented 7%, not out of control, but with a desperate, focused clarity. He shot forward, a green blur, snatched the grenade out of the air, checked the pin, saw it was indeed about to fall out, and jammed it back in with a decisive click. He stood there, chest heaving, the cold metal of the grenade clutched in his trembling hand. Deadpool was silent for a moment, then began to applaud slowly. Well, look at that. You not only dodged, you neutralized the threat. And you pushed your quirk output without shattering your bones into dust. See? My methods get results. A+, kid. You can keep the grenade. It's a souvenir. Izuku stared at the weapon in his hand, then at the maniac on the pillar, and felt a wave of profound existential dread wash over him. Their second lesson took place in the same gym, moments later. Izuku was still trying to get his heart rate back to a non-lethal level. Okay, next lesson, banter. Deadpool declared, hopping down from the pillar. A hero's most underrated weapon. A well-timed quip can disorient an opponent, boost civilian morale, and make for a great soundbite on the evening news. Your turn. My turn? Izuku stammered. Yeah. Hit me with your best shot. Imagine I'm a big, ugly villain. What's your go-to one-liner? Izuku's mind went completely blank. One-liners? He spent his free time analyzing quirk logistics and perfecting his footwork. He'd never even considered a battle cry beyond just shouting the name of his attack. I don't have one, he admitted. Deadpool gasped. No one-liner? That's like a knight without a sword. A chef without a hat. A comic book without a to be continued? Unacceptable. We're fixing this right now. He pointed a finger at Izuku. I am the evil Dr. Destructo. I'm about to blow up the city's supply of puppy chow. What do you say? That's terrible. Izuku cried, genuinely horrified by the imaginary scenario. I know I'm terrible, that's why I'm the villain. Now, what's your line? Izuku racked his brain. Your evil plan is not very nice. Deadpool stared at him. The silence stretched for an eternity. Wow, Deadpool said finally. That was physically painful to listen to. I think my ears are bleeding under this mask. No. It needs punch. It needs pizzazz. You're this powerhouse of a kid, right? Your big move is smash. So lean into it. Something like, looks like your plan is about to be smashed. That's a little cheesy, Izuku mumbled. Cheesy is the point. It's disarming. Now you're about to punch me. You rear back, yell smash, and you say your line. Go! Izuku took a deep breath. This was absurd. He was training with the world's most unstable mercenary on how to tell jokes in a fight. He clenched his fist, the green energy of one for all swirling around it. He channeled all of his focus, all of his embarrassment, all of his frustration into this one ridiculous task. He reared back his fist. It's time to SS smash, if that's okay with you. The last part came out as a timid squeak. The energy around his fist dissipated with a sad fizzle. Deadpool put his face in his hands. We have so much work to do. The third lesson was the strangest of all. They were walking down a UA hallway, and Deadpool suddenly stopped and pointed at a blank wall. You see that? He asked, his voice serious. Izuku looked. It was a perfectly normal, cream-colored wall. See what? The panel border, kid! We're in the bottom left panel on a right page spread. It's a classic setup for a page-turn reveal. Something big is about to happen. Probably that angry blonde kid is about to come around the corner. Izuku stared at him, his brow furrowed in confusion. Panel, border? What are you talking about? The comic book, Green Bean. The manga. The story we're in. Deadpool insisted, waving his hands around as if sculpting the air. We're characters. You're the plucky protagonist. I'm the chaotic mentor/comic relief. Mr. Grumpy Scarf is the tired teacher. Angry Pomeranian is your rival. It's all tropes. I can see the scaffolding of the story, the speech bubbles, the little editor's notes in the margins, all of it. Izuku's eyes widened, but not with understanding. With analysis. He pulled out his notebook, a fresh one he'd already half filled with observations on Deadpool, and began scribbling furiously. Subject Deadpool. Possible quirk manifestation, fourth wall awareness or narrative perception. seems to grant the user knowledge of events as if they were part of a pre-written story. User perceives visual and auditory information that is non-existent to others, e.g., panel borders, speech bubbles. This could be a form of precognition, but the subject describes it in highly specific, esoteric terms. Is it a cognitive hazard? Does prolonged exposure affect the perceptions of others? Or is it a purely psychological condition manifesting as a quirk-like ability? Need more data. Is it possible to break the fourth wall? What is the fourth wall? A physical construct? A metaphysical concept? You're not getting it, Deadpool sighed, peering over Izuku's shoulder at the frantic scribbling. You're trying to science it. You can't science the meta. It's like trying to taste the color blue. You just gotta accept it. Just then, the corner at the end of the hall exploded. Deku! Katsuki Bakugo rounded the corner, his palms smoking, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He looked even angrier than usual, which was a feat Izuku hadn't thought possible. Deadpool didn't even look surprised. He just patted Izuku on the shoulder. See? Page turn reveal. Classic. Class 1A's reaction. The classroom of 1A was buzzing. The rumors had been flying all morning about the strange, red and black-clad American who had attached himself to Midoriya. Now, he was here, lounging in the teacher's chair at the front of the room, his feet kicked up on the desk, while Aizawa was conspicuously absent, likely seeking industrial-strength aspirin. Midoriya, my boy. Tenya Ida marched up to his desk, his arms chopping the air with rigid precision. You must explain. Who is this individual? His presence on school grounds is a flagrant violation of at least 17 different UE regulations. His costume does not adhere to the hero dress code, and his cavalier attitude is unbecoming of an educational environment. He's, my new combat instructor, Izuku said weakly, wishing the floor would swallow him whole. I prefer Chaos Coordinator, Deadpool chimed in from the front, not bothering to look at them. And you, Robocop, need to loosen up. That stick up your butt must have a stick up its butt. Ida gasped, scandalized. Uraraka, sitting nearby, just looked deeply confused. Deku-kun, she whispered, are you okay? He seems loud. Loud is my middle name, Deadpool said, somehow hearing her. My full name is Wade Loud Wilson. It's on my birth certificate. Which is probably a fake. And laminated. It was at that moment Bakugo finally lost what little self-control he possessed. He had been seething in his seat, watching this ridiculous charlatan who had somehow become the center of attention. He slammed his hands on his desk, setting off a series of small explosions. That's it. I don't know who the hell you think you are, you walking traffic cone, but you're going to get the hell away from Deku and out of my school before I blast you into next week. The entire class tensed. Bakugo's anger was a familiar force of nature, but it was rarely directed with such intensity at a supposed teacher. Deadpool slowly lowered his feet from the desk. He stood up and turned to face Bakugo, his body language deceptively relaxed. My. Such language. And here I thought this was a prestigious academy. He began to walk towards Bakugo, his footsteps silent. You must be the rival. The angry one with the explosion powers and the emotional range of a startled cat. Bakugo, right? You're damn right, Bakugo snarled, standing up to meet him. And I'm the one who's going to be number one, not that useless nerd. So why don't you get lost before you get hurt? Hurt? Deadpool chuckled. It was a dry, unsettling sound. Kid, I've been hurt by experts. You're just an angry Pomeranian with a fireworks fetish. That was the spark that lit the fuse. Die! Bakugo roared, lunging forward, his right hand crackling with explosive energy. He swung a massive right hook, an explosion designed to incapacitate. Deadpool didn't even seem to try. He simply took a small step to the left. Bakugo's fist, and the explosion that erupted from it, flew past his head, scorching the wall behind him. Whoa, die! Deadpool tooted, wagging a finger. Bit of an overreaction for a Tuesday, don't you think? Did someone steal your sweet roll? Bakugo roared in frustration and attacked again, a relentless barrage of explosions and high-speed attacks. But it was like trying to punch smoke. Deadpool weaved and dodged, not with the practiced grace of a martial artist, but with a floppy, unpredictable looseness that made him impossible to track. He wasn't just avoiding the attacks, he was making Bakugo look foolish. AP shot! Bakugo yelled, focusing his blast into a concentrated beam. Deadpool bent over backwards, the blast searing the air an inch above his face, his body contorting into a pose that defied gravity and basic anatomy. The Matrix. Love that movie. The sequels, not so much. He straightened up and, in a flash, poked Bakugo in the forehead. Boop. The sheer indignity of it made Bakugo freeze for a split second. It was all the opening Deadpool needed. He didn't attack. He just started talking. You know, for a guy who wants to be the #1 hero, you've got a real villainous catchphrase. Die, die, die. It's not very marketable. Have you considered something more heroic? Like taste justice, or feel the burn of righteousness. We can workshop it. Bakugo was trembling, not with fear, but with a level of rage so profound it was rendering him speechless. He was being lectured on branding by a cartoon character, while the entire class watched. From the back of the room, Shoto Todoroki watched the exchange with a detached, analytical calm. His expression was unreadable, but his mind was racing. This man, he has no fear. Bakugo's power is overwhelming, designed to intimidate and destroy. But he's treating it like a joke. He's not countering the power, he's countering the intent behind it. His unpredictability is a perfect defense against a purely offensive fighter. Fascinating. The confrontation was finally broken up by the arrival of Aizawa, who looked like he had aged 10 years in the last hour. His binding weapon was noticeably shorter. All Might's intervention. The call came an hour later. Young Midoriya, please report to the faculty lounge. The voice was All Might's. The tone was grave. Izuku walked to the lounge with the sense of a man walking to his own execution. He opened the door to find All Might, in his skeletal form, sitting on a couch. Standing opposite him, examining a potted plant with intense interest, was Deadpool. Ah, young Midoriya, come in, Toshinori Yagi said, his voice heavy. He gestured to the empty space beside him on the couch. Izuku sat down, his posture rigid. We need to talk about your associate, Toshinori began, looking at Deadpool, who was now sniffing one of the plant's leaves. Is this a ficus? Deadpool asked. I knew a ficus once. We had a falling out. It was a whole thing. Long story short, I'm not allowed in the botanical gardens in Des Moines anymore. Toshinori sighed, a weary, rattling sound. He fixed his gaze on Izuku. My boy, I know you are eager to learn, to grow stronger. But this man, his methods are not the ways of a hero. What he did in Hosu was reckless, dangerous. A hero protects, he inspires hope. He does not use rubber chickens and ricochet bullets. Hey, don't knock the chicken. It was tactically sound, Deadpool interjected, turning away from the plant. His masked lenses seemed to bore into Toshinori. And speaking of hope, how's that whole symbol of peace gig working out for you? Looks a little draining. Toshinori coughed, a small speck of blood appearing on his lips that he quickly wiped away. His eyes widened in shock. No one outside of a tiny, trusted circle knew about his injury or his time limit. How did you, fourth wall dude? I told the kid you gotta keep up, Deadpool said, waving a dismissive hand. He sauntered over and plopped down in the armchair opposite them, leaning forward conspiratorially. Look, Toshi, can I call you Toshi? I get what you're trying to do. You're molding the kid in your image. The big smile, the righteous punches, the whole package. But newsflash, big guy, the world's getting darker. The villains are getting smarter. Sometimes, you can't just punch your way out of a problem. He is the inheritor of One for All. Toshinori insisted, his voice rising with a rare show of anger. It is a sacred torch, a power meant to save, not to kill, and I'm not teaching him to kill. I'm teaching him to win, Deadpool countered. I'm teaching him to be unpredictable. To think outside the box you've spent his whole life trying to stuff him into. The kid has the heart of a hero, no doubt. Best I've ever seen. But he's got the strategic flexibility of a brick. I'm just trying to turn him into a bouncy ball. A very heroic, green bouncy ball of justice, Toshinori looked utterly lost. He was the symbol of peace, a pillar of strength. He dealt with supervillains and natural disasters. He was not equipped to handle a fast-talking, fourth-wall-breaking meta-commentator who seemed to know all his secrets. Deadpool, sensing victory, decided to press his advantage. Look, I can see you're a busy man. Pillar of society, secret wasting away illness, mentoring the next generation, it's a lot. You know what you need? He reached into a pouch and pulled out a glossy, colorful brochure. A timeshare. I've got a fantastic little spot in the Marvel Universe. Lovely view of Avengers Tower, when it's not blown up. Great rates. For you, I can even throw in a 2-week pass to the Savage Land. The kids will love the dinosaurs. He slid the brochure across the coffee table. Toshinori stared at it as if it were a venomous snake. And another thing, Deadpool continued, leaning back. That United States of Smash thing? Killer catchphrase. Really? But have you trademarked it? Because if not, I know a guy. He's a little sleazy, but his rates are reasonable. We could get you set up with merchandising rights, lunchboxes, action figures with smashing action. You'd make a killing. The intervention was over. Toshinori sat in stunned silence, the timeshare brochure lying on the table between them. He had entered this conversation hoping to sever the connection between his successor and this chaotic man. He left it wondering if he should consult a lawyer about his catchphrase. Izuku looked at his mentor, the greatest hero the world had ever known, who had been verbally and psychologically dismantled in under 5 minutes. Then he looked at Deadpool, who was now trying to see if he could stick a pen to his forehead using only suction. This wasn't a mentorship. It was a hostage situation. And Izuku Midoriya was beginning to suspect he had a bad case of Stockholm Syndrome. His life was no longer about following the neat, heroic path All Might had laid out for him. It was about surviving the daily chaos of the world's worst mentor. The city of Muzurifu was a sprawling beast of steel and glass, and like any great beast, it had its own rhythms. By day, it was a bustling hub of commerce and education, its streets filled with the hopeful energy of a society built around heroes. By night it transformed. The shadows grew longer, the arteries of traffic thinned, and a different kind of life emerged. It was in these quieter, darker hours that the city's protectors were most vigilant. Perched atop a 6-story office building, Shota Aizawa was a creature of those shadows. He was a pillar of stillness, his dark costume blending seamlessly with the ventilation units and rooftop gravel around him. Only his eyes, weary but sharp, moved, scanning the street below. Beside him, Izuku Midoriya was trying his best to emulate that same professional stillness. He was failing spectacularly, not on the outside. On the outside, he was a perfect picture of a hero in training on his first serious stakeout. He was crouched low, his green costume a muted patch of color in the gloom, his gaze fixed on the target building across the street, a high-security research and development facility for Kitsueki Tech Industries. But on the inside, his mind was a high-speed bullet train of anxieties and calculations. Okay, Kitsueki Tech. They specialize in biointegrated cybernetics. The intel suggests the targets are after a prototype kinetic energy distributor. The group, tentatively named the Velocity Syndicate, has hit 3 other labs in the past 2 weeks. MO is always the same, hyper-fast, coordinated smash and grab. Their tech seems to grant them short bursts of incredible speed. Aizawa-sensei's erasure is our best weapon, but he has to maintain line of sight. If they move too erratically, his effectiveness drops by 60%. My role is to act as support. Pin them down. Force them into a position where Sensei can get a clean look. A 5% St. Louis smash could create a wide area of shattered pavement, disrupting their footing, but that could cause too much collateral damage. Maybe a targeted Delaware smash Air Force to create a focused air buffer? But the wind-up might be too slow. Midoriya, Aizawa's voice cut through his internal monologue, a low rumble that was barely audible over the distant city hum. Breathe. Izuku startled, realizing he'd been holding his breath for nearly 30 seconds. He exhaled in a rush. Sorry, Sensei. Thinking is good. Overthinking is a liability, Aizawa said, not taking his eyes off the target. You've made 5 different plans in the last 10 minutes. I can practically hear your brain sizzling. A plan is a starting point, not a script. The moment the first punch is thrown, the script is irrelevant. All that matters is your training, your instincts, and your ability to adapt. Remember that. Yes, sir, Izuku said, feeling a familiar flush of embarrassment. He forced himself to quiet his mind, to simply watch, to be. The silence that followed was calm, professional, and orderly. It was, of course, too good to last. It started with a faint, crinkling sound from behind them, like someone opening a bag of chips. Aizawa tensed, every muscle in his body coiling. He spun around, his hand instinctively reaching for the remnant of his binding weapon, only to find nothing there. The memory of it being sliced apart by a certain crimson-clad lunatic was still fresh. Standing by the rooftop access door, a silhouette was backlit by the faint city glow. It was tall, lean, and holding a large, crinkly bag. You guys want some gummy worms? Deadpool asked, his voice echoing slightly in the night air. He held up a clear bag filled with wriggling, brightly colored candies. I got the sour kind. They make your face do that thing, you know? Like you just licked a battery. Aizawa's expression was a flat, terrifying mask of pure, undiluted rage. How did you find us? Pfft. Please. A brooding mentor and his earnest protege on a rooftop stakeout, overlooking a high-tech lab that's probably gonna get robbed. Deadpool said, popping a green and orange worm into his mouth. The chewing sounds were obscenely loud in the quiet night. This isn't just a mission, it's a trope. It was in the TV guide. Tonight on My Hero Academia, a very special, very predictable stakeout. I couldn't miss it. He sauntered over, completely oblivious to the murderous aura radiating from Aizawa. He peered over the ledge. Ooh, Katsueki tech. Fancy. What are they cooking up in there? Death rays? Robot butlers? Death ray-powered robot butlers? This is a classified pro-hero operation, Aizawa gritted out, each word a block of ice. You are not authorized. Leave. Now. Classified, schmassified, Deadpool scoffed. He turned his attention to his new favorite subject, adopting a low, hushed tone, as if narrating a nature documentary. And here we see two fascinating creatures in their natural habitat, he whispered dramatically. The greater grumpy sensei, known for its nocturnal habits and its devastatingly tired glare. It lies in wait, a patient predator, its primary fuel source consisting of coffee and the dashed hopes of its students. Izuku buried his face in his hands, his entire body radiating shame. Deadpool nudged him with an elbow. And beside it, the rare green emo protagonist. See how he cowers in social awkwardness? A truly magnificent specimen. Its diet consists of angst, self-doubt, and an unhealthy amount of hero worship. It communicates primarily through a series of elaborate mutters, a behavior that continues to baffle biologists. If you don't shut up in the next 5 seconds, Aizawa hissed, his eyes beginning to glow a faint red, I will throw you off this roof. You could try, Deadpool chirped. But I just regenerate on the way down and probably land on a very expensive car, causing an international incident. It's a whole thing. Messy paperwork for you. You hate paperwork, right? You seem like a guy who hates paperwork. Aizawa's jaw worked silently. He was a master of logic and rational action. Deadpool was a living, breathing logic bomb. There was no rational way to deal with him. Any action Aizawa took would likely result in an outcome more chaotic than just letting him stay. It was a tactical nightmare. He closed his glowing eyes and took a long, slow breath. Fine. You can stay. But you will be silent. You will not move. You will not interfere. You will touch nothing. If you so much as breathe too loudly, the deal is off. You got it, Chief, Deadpool said, giving him a thumbs up. Stealth mode activated. He then proceeded to sit down cross-legged and began humming the theme song to an old spy movie, just loud enough to be infuriating. For the next hour, Aizawa endured a unique form of torture. Deadpool did technically stay silent, but he also mimed playing the drums, practiced shadow puppetry against the wall. His masterpiece was a surprisingly accurate rendering of All Might flexing, and attempted to build a small house of cards out of a deck he produced from one of his pouches. Izuku just tried to focus on the mission, his face burning with a second-hand embarrassment so profound it felt like a physical ailment. Then it happened. 4 figures, moving with a speed that defied the naked eye, appeared at the base of the Ketsueki Tech building. They were blurs of motion, clad in sleek, silver bodysuits that shimmered under the streetlights. They didn't bother with the door. One of them touched the reinforced plasteel wall, and a ripple of kinetic energy turned a 10-foot section into dust. The Velocity Syndicate had arrived. "They're here," Aizawa stated, all business. The annoyance from Deadpool vanished, replaced by cold focus. "Midoriya, on my signal. We disable, we contain. Go." Aizawa dropped from the roof, using his remaining binding weapon as a grappling line to swing down silently. He landed in the alley across from the breach, a shadow preparing to strike. Izuku took a deep breath. "Okay. Plan C. Create a distraction, draw 2 of them outside. Aizawa erases their quirks, or deactivates their tech, whichever it is, and I engage." He leaped from the roof, full cowling flaring to life around him. He landed with a soft thud at the mouth of the alley, a green and black sentinel. "Stop, villains! Your robbery is over," he shouted, his voice coming out a little shakier than he'd intended. 2 of the silver-clad figures blurred out of the hole in the wall. Their movements were jarring, inhumanly fast. They weren't just running, they were skipping frames, moving from one point to another with almost no visible transition. "A hero," one of them hissed, his voice a digitized rasp. "The intel said the response time would be slower." "Doesn't matter," the other said. "Protocol 7. Blitz and neutralize." They charged. Izuku was ready. He'd calculated their probable trajectory. He activated full cowling at 6%, a new, risky level of output, and prepared to intercept. He was too slow. They didn't run at him. They flickered. One appeared on his left, a vibroblade already swinging for his ribs. Izuku twisted, barely getting his armored gauntlet up in time to block. The impact sent a painful jolt up his entire arm. Before he could recover, the second one was behind him, delivering a powerful kick to the back of his knee that sent him stumbling. From the shadows, Aizawa's eyes flared red. He caught the first villain in his gaze. The shimmering silver suit flickered and died, and the villain's super speed vanished. He was suddenly just a man in a fancy suit. "Now, Midoriya!" Aizawa yelled. Izuku saw his chance. The depowered villain was disoriented, vulnerable. He pushed off, fist cocked for a 5% smash. But the syndicate was prepared for this. The second villain, still empowered, moved. He became a streak of silver light, appearing between Aizawa and his target, breaking the line of sight for a crucial half-second. It was all it took. The first villain's suit flared back to life. He dodged Izuku's punch with contemptuous ease and delivered a sharp, painful jab to Izuku's side. Izuku gasped, the wind knocked out of him. He was outmatched. His plans, his analysis, they were useless against this level of pure, unadulterated speed. Aizawa was locked in a deadly game of cat and mouse, trying to keep his gaze on targets that refused to stay still, while Izuku was being systematically taken apart. The villains were a well-oiled machine, their coordination perfect, their objective clear. The fight was devolving into a losing battle. The heroes were fighting by the book, but the villains were writing a new one. And then, from the rooftop above, came the sound of an engine sputtering to life. It was a high-pitched, whiny noise, like an angry lawnmower. "What's that sound?" one of the villains asked, pausing his assault on Izuku. Aizawa looked up, his eyes wide with a dawning horror. Deadpool was sitting astride a beat-up, bright pink moped that had apparently been left on the roof for some reason. He had a pair of oversized aviator sunglasses on over his mask. "Hey, eraser dude!" he yelled down. "I was getting bored. Decided to make a grand entrance. What do you think? Is it heroic?" "Don't you dare," Aizawa began, but it was too late. With a triumphant cry of maximum effort, Deadpool revved the tiny engine and drove the moped straight off the edge of the 6-story building. Time seemed to slow for everyone except the man plummeting towards the street on a piece of inadequate machinery. He struck a pose midair, one leg kicked out, peace signs flashing from both hands. The Velocity Syndicate, a team built on precision, speed, and flawless coordination, could only stare upwards, their programming utterly failing to compute the scene unfolding above them. The moped, with Deadpool still on it, didn't just land. It crashed directly through the wall of the building next to the one the villains had breached, exploding into the lobby of what looked like an accounting firm in a shower of plaster, drywall, and terrified accountants. The sheer, unadulterated chaos of the entrance was a tactical nuke detonated in the middle of the syndicate's perfectly laid plans. Their formation, their coordination, their entire operational mindset, shattered. They were prepared for pro-heroes. They were not prepared for an indestructible idiot on a stolen scooter. Deadpool emerged from the dust-filled hole he'd created, shaking his head. The moped was a twisted wreck behind him. Note to self, he muttered, mopeds are not designed for aerial insertion. Or walls. He spotted the silver-clad villains, who were still staring at the hole he'd made. Boo! He shouted. One of the villains flinched. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible reaction, but it was enough. Their perfect synchronicity was broken. What is he? One of them shrieked, his digital voice cracking with panic. He's not on any hero registry. He's not a hero, Aizawa grunted, taking advantage of the distraction to erase the quirk of the villain closest to him. He's a gremlin. The fight resumed, but the dynamic had fundamentally changed. It was no longer a precise, coordinated assault. It was a frantic, messy brawl. Deadpool was a chaos agent, a wrench thrown into the delicate gears of the syndicate's machine. He didn't fight with technique, he fought with absurdity. He charged one of the villains, who prepared a defensive stance. Instead of attacking, Deadpool slid on his knees and threw a handful of sour gummy worms directly into the villain's faceplate. The villain recoiled, sputtering, trying to wipe the sticky candy from his visor. Izuku, shaking off the hit to his ribs, saw the opening. He lunged, not with a massive smash, but with a quick, targeted kick to the villain's knee, sending him to the ground. It was an instinctive, reactive move, not one he had planned. The battle became a bizarre three-ring circus. On one side, Aizawa was methodically disabling and capturing villains whenever Deadpool's antics created a long enough opening. On the other side, Izuku was fighting with a newfound, desperate energy, using the mercenaries' distractions to land quick, efficient blows. And in the center of it all was Deadpool, a whirlwind of nonsense. He used the wreckage of the moped as a blunt instrument. He dodged a vibroblade by doing the worm. He kept up a running commentary that was clearly audible to everyone, and a right hook from villain number 3. Ooh, but what's this? Deadpool counters with a pelvic thrust. It's super effective. The crowd goes wild. The judges give it a 9.5, docked half a point for lack of glitter. The leader of the syndicate, seeing his operation falling apart, made a decision. He was inside the lab, and he emerged now, clutching a reinforced briefcase. Operation compromised. All units, disengage. Rendezvous at Point Gamma. He activated his own speed tech, becoming the fastest of them all, a near-invisible blur heading down the street. He's getting away with the prototype. Izuku yelled. He was too far away. Aizawa was tangled up with the last remaining henchman. There was no way to stop him. All the proper, heroic options were gone. He had failed. Hey, broccoli boy! Heads up! A voice cut through his panic. Deadpool, having just tied another villain's shoelaces together, was jogging towards him. He tossed something underhanded to Izuku. Izuku caught it out of reflex. It was a bola, 2 weighted spheres connected by a thick cord. But the spheres were strange. They were matte black, with a texture like clay, and they were covered in glitter, a bright, obnoxious, pink glitter that shimmered under the streetlights. They looked like something a child would make in art class, if that child had access to military-grade explosives. What is this? Izuku asked, his mind reeling. It's a bola! Made of C4. Deadpool said cheerfully. Don't worry, it's unarmed. Probably. But it's sticky. And sparkly. Go on, kid! The villain's monologuing his escape. It's now or never. Improvise. Izuku looked at the strange device in his hands. It felt heavy, alien. This wasn't a hero's tool. It was a weapon, a trap. He could feel All Might's disappointed gaze on him, even from miles away. A hero saves people with a smile. They don't throw trick bombs. He looked down the street. The syndicate leader was almost at the corner, his escape imminent. All that research, all that dangerous technology, was about to be lost. People could get hurt. He thought of Aizawa's words. A plan is a starting point, not a script. Adapt. He thought of Deadpool's insane, chaotic, yet undeniably effective methods, and in that moment, Izuku Midoriya made a choice. He chose to win. He gripped the glittery bola, spinning it once, twice, building momentum. His analytical mind, which had failed him with rigid plans, was now a supercomputer of frantic, last-second calculations. Target is moving at approximately 60 miles per hour. Wind speed is negligible. I need to lead him by 15 feet. Arc of the throw needs to compensate for the weight. He didn't yell a special move. He just threw. The bola sailed through the night air, a ridiculous, sparkling comet of desperation. It flew true. The syndicate leader, so focused on his forward escape, didn't see it coming until it was too late. The cord wrapped around his legs, and the sticky, glitter-covered C4 spheres slapped onto his shins with a wet thwomp. His legs tangled, his impossible speed became his undoing. He went down hard, tumbling head over heels in a shower of sparks and pink glitter, finally skidding to a halt in a heap 20 yards down the road. The briefcase flew from his grasp, landing safely on a patch of grass. Silence descended upon the street, broken only by the groans of captured villains and the distant sound of approaching sirens. Izuku stood there, his arms still outstretched, his chest heaving. He had done it. He had stopped the villain. But it didn't feel like a clean, heroic victory. It felt messy. Complicated. Aizawa finally subdued the last henchman, wrapping him tightly in what was left of his capture weapon. He walked over, his expression unreadable. He looked at the defeated syndicate leader, at the scattered wreckage, at the hole in the accounting firm's wall, and he looked at himself. His dark hero costume, once a symbol of stealth and professionalism, was now dusted with a fine coating of shimmering pink glitter that had been blasted outwards when the bola made impact. He slowly raised a hand and wiped a speck of glitter off his cheek. He looked at Deadpool, who was currently trying to put sunglasses on one of the unconscious villains. Then he looked at Izuku. Your methods, Aizawa said, his voice flat and tired, are a logistical nightmare. The property damage reports will take me a week to fill out. You completely ignored protocol, engaged an unknown entity, and used a non-regulation, highly questionable piece of equipment. Izuku flinched, bracing for the lecture, for the punishment he knew he deserved. However, Aizawa continued, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes, the threat is neutralized. The prototype is secure. The result is acceptable. He sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of the entire world. Good work, Midoriya. He turned and began the tedious process of securing the scene for the police. Izuku stood frozen, the words washing over him. Good work. He had succeeded. He had adapted. He had won. He looked at his hands, which had thrown the ridiculous, chaotic weapon. A strange feeling bloomed in his chest, a feeling he had never experienced before. It was a bizarre, contradictory cocktail of deep, profound shame at the methods he had used, and a sharp, electrifying thrill of pride in the result he had achieved. He had stopped the villain, but he hadn't done it like All Might. He had done it like himself. A version of himself influenced by the madness standing 10 feet away, humming off-key. For the first time, Izuku Midoriya wondered if the path to becoming the #1 hero wasn't a straight, shining line, but a chaotic, messy, and glitter-covered detour. The uneasy truce brokered by Aizawa's exhausted resignation had settled into a new, deeply strange routine. Deadpool, for reasons known only to himself and possibly the cosmic entity he occasionally claimed to be dating, had decided to make Izuku Midoriya his personal project. This meant that Izuku's internship, once a structured if brutal regimen under Gran Torino, had devolved into a series of surreal field trips into the heart of madness. Their patrols were the most potent example of this new dynamic. Where Izuku had once walked the streets with a vigilant eye, analyzing crowd flow and looking for signs of trouble, he now walked them with a sense of perpetually braced anxiety, waiting for the next inevitable explosion of absurdity from the man walking beside him. Today's patrol started, deceptively, with an act of pure, unadulterated heroism. An elderly woman, her back bent with age and her arms laden with grocery bags, stood at a busy intersection, looking at the flashing "Don't Walk" sign with an expression of weary defeat. Izuku's hero instincts, honed since childhood, kicked in immediately. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, approaching her with the gentle, reassuring smile he'd practiced in the mirror. "May I help you with your bags? I can help you cross the street safely." The woman beamed at him, her wrinkled face lighting up. "Oh, what a nice young man! A UE student! It's so good to see heroes helping the community." It was a perfect, textbook example of civic duty. It was the kind of moment All Might would have cherished. "Stand aside, citizen helper!" A voice boomed from behind them. Deadpool strode forward, puffing out his chest. "This is a job for a professional. You are clearly not equipped for this level of high-stakes elder assistance." "What?" "I'm just helping her cross the street," Izuku said, bewildered. "Just crossing the street?" Deadpool scoffed. "Look at this intersection. It's a death trap. 4 lanes of vehicular fury. Aggressive bicyclists who obey no law of God or man. That "Don't Walk" sign is flashing with palpable malice. This isn't a crosswalk, kid, it's the goddamn Thunderdome." He turned to the old woman, his masked lenses somehow conveying an expression of intense seriousness. "Ma'am, your safety is my #1 priority. I have assessed the situation and devised a multi-phase strategic plan to ensure your successful transit. Phase 1, shock and awe." Before Izuku or the woman could react, Deadpool leaped into the middle of the intersection. The light was green for traffic. Cars, previously moving at a steady clip, screeched to a halt, their horns blaring in a cacophony of fury. "Attention, motorists!" Deadpool yelled, holding his hands up like a traffic cop. "This intersection is now under the jurisdiction of the Deadpool Express Elder Crossing Service. Cease all vehicular movement. Contemplate your life choices. Think about that thing you said to your cousin at Thanksgiving. You know the one." Drivers leaned out their windows, shouting a colorful assortment of Japanese curses. A truck driver honked his air horn, a deafening blast that echoed off the buildings. "Phase 2, the human shield." Deadpool continued undeterred. He struck a dramatic pose in front of the crosswalk. "I will now use my incredibly toned and utterly immortal body as a barrier against any rogue vehicles. Proceed, my dear lady. Fear no chariot of steel, for I am your bulwark." The old woman looked at Izuku, her previous delight replaced with wide-eyed terror. Is he with you?" Technically, Izuku mumbled, his soul trying to exit his body via his ears. "It's complicated." "Phase 3, moral support," Deadpool shouted, turning to watch them. "You're doing great. Left foot, right foot. You're a natural. The pavement is your runway. Work it." Izuku, his face burning with a shame so intense it could have powered a small city, quickly took the woman's arm and half-guided, half-hustled her across the street, a chorus of angry horns providing their soundtrack. Once they were safely on the other side, the woman snatched her grocery bags back. "Thank you, young man," she said to Izuku, her voice trembling slightly. Then she pointed a shaky finger at Deadpool, who was now doing the robot dance in the middle of the road. "But you should really get your friend some help." She then scurried away as fast as her old legs could carry her. Deadpool jogged back over to the sidewalk, beaming with pride as traffic finally began to move again. "See? Mission accomplished. Safely across, not a scratch on her. We make a great team. You're the heart, I'm the everything else. The brains, the brawn, the stunning good looks. You stopped 4 lanes of traffic and probably caused 3 heart attacks." Izuku hissed. Details. Deadpool waved a dismissive hand. "The objective was met. That's a win in my book. Now, where to next? Ooh, I see a potential public menace that needs dealing with." He wasn't pointing at a mugger or a villain. He was pointing at a small flock of pigeons pecking at some discarded breadcrumbs in a nearby park. Izuku watched in horror as Deadpool marched over to the birds, his hands on his hips. "All right, you feathered freeloaders, let's talk." The pigeons cooed, completely unaware of the lecture they were about to receive. "I know your game," Deadpool said, pointing an accusatory finger at a particularly plump-looking pigeon. "Don't think I don't. You act all innocent, with your head bobbing and your cooing, but you're a menace to society. A syndicate. The winged mafia, one of the pigeons pecked at a crumb. Don't you ignore me, Bartholomew. Deadpool snapped. I'm talking to you. Your wanton disregard for public statues is a disgrace. The city spends millions on bronze monuments to its heroes, and what do? You use them as your personal lavatory. It's disrespectful. Do you know how hard it is to get guano out of detailed capework? Izuku just stood by the park entrance, trying to become invisible. A few passers-by were giving them a wide berth, whispering to each other. He was fairly certain he was going to end up on the evening news, not for heroism, but as that UE student who hangs out with the guy who yells at birds. And another thing, Deadpool continued, now pacing in front of the flock like a prosecuting attorney. Your business model is unsustainable. You rely entirely on handouts, discarded French fries, half-eaten hot dogs, the generosity of old men on park benches. You're not contributing to the economy. You're avian anarchists, and your reign of terror ends today. He pulled out a water pistol he'd apparently been carrying and squirted one of the pigeons. The bird, startled, flew up into a tree. The rest of the flock scattered into the air. That's right, you fly away. Deadpool shouted after them. Tell your kingpin I'm onto him. The streets of Muzutafu are under new management. He holstered his water pistol and turned back to Izuku, dusting his hands off. Another crisis averted. Being a hero is exhausting. Izuku didn't know what to say. He was living in a cartoon that only one person knew was a cartoon. He felt a stress headache beginning to form behind his eyes. Can we just take a break? Please? Their break consisted of retreating to the cheap, cramped apartment Deadpool had acquired in a part of the city that charitably could be called full of character. The landlord, a nervous man named Mr. Tanaka, had been paid 6 months' rent in advance with a wad of cash that smelled faintly of gunpowder and chimichanga grease. He had wisely chosen not to ask any questions. The apartment was a disaster zone. Piles of weapons magazines were stacked next to empty takeout containers. A single, sad-looking cactus in the corner was wearing a tiny sombrero. Katanas were propped up against the wall next to a half-finished jigsaw puzzle of a basket of kittens. It was the physical manifestation of Deadpool's mind. Izuku found the cleanest corner of the floor, sat down with his back against the wall, and pulled out his salvation, his notebook. The familiar weight of it in his hands, the smooth glide of his pen on the paper, was the only thing that felt sane in his new life. He opened it to a fresh page, the heading already written, Quirk Analysis, Velocity Syndicate. He began to write, his hand moving with practiced speed, the muttering starting almost unconsciously. The tech-based quirk or support gear utilized by the Velocity Syndicate appears to grant short-burst temporal or spatial displacement rather than pure speed. This is evidenced by the frame-skipping visual effect. Aizawa-sensei's erasure was effective, which suggests a biological component is being augmented by the suits, possibly a minor teleportation quirk that's amplified to an extreme degree. Their weakness was a reliance on coordination. When their pattern was disrupted by an unpredictable element, he paused, a deep frown on his face as he wrote the next words. Such as Deadpool's moped-based aerial insertion, their effectiveness plummeted by over 80%. Conclusion: chaos is a direct counter to rigid, pattern-based tactics. But how to quantify chaos? How to replicate it without? He trailed off, chewing on the end of his pen. It was a fascinating tactical problem. What you working on there, Brainiac? Deadpool's voice was suddenly right by his ear. Izuku yelped, and nearly jumped out of his skin. Deadpool was leaning over his shoulder, reading the notebook upside down. Whoa, Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 13? Deadpool whistled. You're already on Volume 13? Kid, you've got a serious hobby problem. Or a future as the world's most overprepared stalker. Could go either way. It's not stalking. Izuku squeaked, clutching the notebook to his chest protectively. It's analysis. To be a great hero, you have to understand quirks, fighting styles, weaknesses. Let me see that, Deadpool said, snatching the book before Izuku could react. Hey! Give it back! Relax. I just want to see what the future #1 hero is cooking up in that big green brain of yours. Deadpool flopped onto the apartment's only piece of furniture, a lumpy beanbag chair that had seen better days, and began flipping through the pages. Izuku watched him, his heart pounding with anxiety. That notebook was his most private possession. It contained all his hopes, his fears, his most detailed observations. Deadpool was quiet for a surprisingly long time. He flipped page after page, his masthead tilting this way and that. He saw the detailed anatomical drawings of how he thought Bakugo's nitroglycerin sweat worked. He saw the complex trajectory charts for Aizawa's binding weapon. He saw the page on All Might, filled with reverent praise and meticulous notes on his different smashes, bordered with little drawings of his smiling face. Finally, he looked up from the book, his expressive lenses wide. "Kid," he said, his voice lacking its usual manic edge. "This is incredible. Seriously. The level of detail, the tactical breakdowns, you're not just a fanba, you're a damn supercomputer. This is military-grade threat assessment. With, more doodles." Izuku blinked, taken aback. He'd been expecting mockery, not praise. Genuine praise. A warmth spread through his chest. You really think so? Absolutely. This is your superpower, more than that glowy green stuff. The problem is, he said, his tone shifting back to its usual brand of chaos, it's all a little dry. A little too by the book. It's missing the secret ingredient. The human element. The pizzazz. He pulled a red marker out of one of his pouches with a flourish. "What are you doing?" Izuku asked, a new wave of panic rising. "I'm helping. Peer review. I'm adding my own improvements," Deadpool declared. "Don't worry, my consultation fee is very reasonable." He turned to the page on Endeavor. Izuku had filled it with notes on his Hellflame quirk, his heat output, his fighting range, and his known super moves. Deadpool uncapped the marker and started writing in the margins in big, messy letters. "Let's see. Endeavor," Deadpool read aloud. "You've got all the technical stuff, but you're missing the important parts." He scribbled furiously. "Okay, here we go. Under weaknesses, I'm adding, terrible parenting. In all caps, because it's important. Also, anger management issues that would make the Hulk tell him to take a deep breath. And, for strategic purposes, susceptible to water. And therapy. Lots and lots of therapy." Izuku stared, horrified and fascinated. He was defacing his sacred text, yet, he wasn't exactly wrong. Deadpool flipped to the next page he recognized. "Ah, the angry Pomeranian. That's Kaken." Izuku protested weakly. "Whatever. Okay, your analysis of his explosion quirk is spot on, but you're missing the fundamentals of his character." He drew a little cartoon of Bakugo yelling at a cloud. Under psychological profile, let's add, likes, winning. Dislikes, literally everything else, including gentle breezes and the concept of sharing. And under strategic approach, this is key. He wrote in big letters, "Give him a Snickers. He's not him when he's hungry." That's from a commercial. It's called cross-promotional synergy, kid. Look it up. He kept flipping. "Ooh, Eraserhead. Mr. Grumpy Scarf." He added a note: "Primary weakness, existential dread, chronic lack of sleep, and people with my exact personality. Strategy, offer him a pillow and a quiet room. He might just forfeit." He finally landed on the page for All Might. Izuku held his breath. Deadpool read Izuku's reverent notes, a small, almost imperceptible softening in his posture. Then he grinned and brought the marker to the page. "Okay, the big guy. The symbol of peace. You've covered his strength, but what about his real vulnerabilities?" He wrote carefully in the corner of the page, "Can be defeated by a lengthy, detailed discussion of retirement benefits, pension plans, and proper healthcare coverage for work-related injuries." He then added in smaller letters underneath, "Also, probably ticklish. Untested theory, but worth a shot in a pinch." He capped the marker and tossed the notebook back to Izuku. "There. Upgraded. Version 2.0. The maximum effort edition." Izuku caught it, holding it like it was a live bomb. He looked at the pages, at the messy red scrawl marring his neat, precise handwriting. He should have been furious. He should have been devastated. But as he read the ridiculous, insane, and shockingly insightful notes. A small, traitorous smile tugged at the corner of his lips. The analysis was still there, but now it was layered with a chaotic truth he had never considered. Heroes weren't just a collection of stats and powers. They were people. Flawed, angry, tired, ticklish people. Later that evening, the chaotic energy of the day finally began to subside. They were on the roof of the apartment building, the city lights of Muzurafu sprawling out before them like a galaxy of fallen stars. The air was cool, and the constant hum of the metropolis below was a soothing, monotonous drone. Deadpool was sitting on the ledge, his legs dangling over the side, cleaning one of his katanas with an oilcloth. Izuku was sitting a few feet away, leaning against the ventilation unit. The silence felt different up here. It wasn't the tense silence of a stakeout, or the awkward silence of the apartment. It was a comfortable, contemplative quiet. And in that quiet, a question that had been bubbling in the back of Izuku's mind for days finally rose to the surface. He'd seen Deadpool fight. He'd seen him joke. He'd seen his bizarre form of compassion when dealing with the old woman, and his unexpected intelligence when looking at his notebook. But he didn't understand the why of it all. Wade? He asked, using the name for the first time. It felt strange on his tongue. Deadpool paused his cleaning, but he didn't turn around. Yeah, kid? Why do you do this? Izuku asked, his voice soft. You're not a registered hero. You don't seem to care about the law. You complain about not getting paid, but you still put yourself in danger. Why? Deadpool stopped polishing his sword. He set it down gently beside him on the ledge. For a full 10 seconds he didn't move or speak. The endless stream of jokes, commentary, and non sequiturs had finally, for the first time since Izuku had met him, run dry. The sudden absence of his manic energy was more jarring than the loudest explosion. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, stripped of its usual performative flair. It was just a voice. A tired voice. You kids here, you got it all figured out, don't you? He said, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon. You grow up in a world of black and white. There are heroes, and there are villains, good guys and bad guys. It's simple. It's clean. You know which side you're on. He picked up a loose piece of gravel from the ledge, turning it over and over in his gloved fingers. I don't come from a place like that, he continued. My world, it's all gray. 50 shades of it, and none of them are the fun, sexy kind. It's a muddy, messy, ugly gray. The good guys do bad things for the right reasons. The bad guys sometimes have a point. The line between a hero and a monster gets so blurry. Sometimes the only difference is who's telling the story. He flicked the piece of gravel off the roof, watching it disappear into the darkness below. You look at me and you see a clown, he said. A cartoon. It's easier that way. For you, for me. But under the mask, there are scars, kid. Not the cool kind that you can show off and tell a story about, the ugly kind. The kind that don't fade, that itch when it's quiet. And the only thing that makes them stop itching, the only thing that makes the noise in my head turn down, even for a little while, is being louder than the noise. He took a shaky breath. It was a tiny, vulnerable sound. This world of yours, with its all mights and its symbols of peace, it's a nice place. A good story. But there are monsters out there that can't be punched into submission. There are things so twisted and ugly that a hero's smile won't fix it. Sometimes you need a monster to fight a monster. And I'm real good at being a monster. He fell silent again. Izuku's heart ached. He was seeing it now, a glimpse through the cracks in the impenetrable wall of comedy. He was seeing the broken man beneath the mask, the tragedy that fueled the chaos. The constant joking wasn't just a personality trait, it was a survival mechanism. It was a shield, not just for himself, but to keep the ugliness he carried from touching a world he secretly, desperately seemed to want to believe in. Just as Izuku was about to say something, anything, Deadpool's entire body language shifted. He shook his head as if clearing it, and the manic energy snapped back into place like a rubber band. He spun around, a cheerful glint back in his masked lenses. Or maybe I just do it 'cause I get to shoot people and eat chimichangas, and the health plan is marginally better than freelance work, he said, his voice back to its usual loud, chipper tone. Plus, the fanfiction potential is huge. You and me, kid? We're gonna be the hottest pairing on the internet. We'll be bigger than Bakugo and that red-haired rock dude. The moment was over. The shield was back up. But Izuku had seen what was behind it. He didn't press. He didn't ask any more questions. He just nodded. Okay. Later that night, back in the sterile, safe quiet of his dorm room at UA, Izuku couldn't sleep. His mind was a whirlwind, replaying the day's events. The pigeons, the notebook, the confession on the rooftop. He sat at his desk, the lamp casting a warm circle of light on the wood grain. His hero analysis notebook was there, its pages now a chaotic collaboration between order and madness. But he didn't reach for it. Instead, he pulled a brand new, empty notebook from his bag. It was crisp and clean, a blank slate. He opened it to the first page. For a long time, he just stared at the empty lines. He thought about the man who fought villains with gummy worms, who saw the world as a comic book, who hid a universe of pain behind a wall of jokes. He couldn't analyze Deadpool like he analyzed other heroes. You couldn't break down chaos into neat little boxes. You couldn't quantify a soul that had been shattered and glued back together wrong. But he had to try. He had to understand. He picked up his pen. At the top of the page, he wrote a new title. It wasn't a statement of fact, like his other entries. It was a question. A beginning. Wade Wilson, analysis? There exists in the universe a fundamental law of narrative balance. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. For every explosion of vibrant, chaotic color, there must exist a countervailing force of muted, orderly gray. For every Deadpool, a universe will, sooner or later, vomit forth an overhaul. It is an inevitability as certain as gravity and taxes. Kai Chisaki, the young leader of the Shai Hasaikai, was a man who worshipped at the altar of order. His world was one of clean lines, of predictable outcomes, of a meticulously planned future free from the filth of the present. The very concept of quirks was, to him, a disease, a plague of randomness and unpredictability that had infected humanity, warping it into a grotesque, chaotic parody of its true potential. His plan was a scalpel, designed to excise this disease from the world, to restore humanity to its pure state. Every action he took, every word he spoke, was a step towards this sterile, perfect future. His headquarters, a labyrinthine complex hidden beneath the streets, was a reflection of his philosophy. The air was filtered, smelling of antiseptic and cold stone. The corridors were immaculate, their lines sharp and unforgiving. His subordinates moved with a quiet, disciplined precision, their garish plague masks hiding any hint of unruly human expression. It was a sanctuary of control in a world gone mad. Today, however, the sanctity of his sanctuary was being threatened by reports of a new kind of madness, one that defied all his carefully constructed paradigms. He sat in his Spartan office, gloved hands steepled before him on a perfectly polished desk. Across from him stood one of his lieutenants, a man named Shin Nemoto, whose quirk, confession, made him an invaluable tool for ensuring loyalty. Nemoto was delivering his report, his voice a dispassionate monotone. The operation to secure the trigger shipment in the Kamino ward was a complete failure, Nemoto stated. Our men were neutralized. The product was lost. The heroes involved were the pro-hero Eraserhead and a UA student. Chisaki's expression, hidden behind his own unique beaked mask, did not change. His displeasure was a cold, still thing, not a fiery outburst. Eraserhead is a known variable. His quirk is a nuisance, but manageable. The student is irrelevant. My men are trained to handle such predictable threats, explained the failure. Nemoto hesitated for a fraction of a second, a minute crack in his disciplined facade. There was a third party. An unknown. He was not on any hero registry. Our surveillance systems captured only fragmented data before they were destroyed. He placed a small tablet on the desk and pushed it forward. Chisaki picked it up, his gloved fingers leaving no smudge on the pristine screen. The video flickered to life. It was chaotic, corrupted footage from a street-level security camera, the audio a distorted mess of static and screams. Chisaki watched a figure in red and black drive a pink moped off a 6-story building. He watched the same figure use sour gummy worms as a tactical weapon. He saw him dodge a plasma blast by breakdancing. The footage was grainy, skipping frames, but the pure, unadulterated chaos was perfectly clear. It was an assault on the senses, an affront to logic. What am I watching? Chisaki's voice was dangerously quiet. We don't know, Nemoto admitted. He calls himself Deadpool. He appears to possess some form of hyperregeneration. Bullets, blades, even a point-blank plasma discharge. Nothing had a lasting effect. But his primary weapon seems to be unpredictability. Our men's combat algorithms were useless. They couldn't predict his movements because his movements had no discernible purpose. Chisaki zoomed in on a single, relatively clear frame. It showed Deadpool standing amidst the wreckage, one foot propped on an unconscious henchman, giving a double thumbs up to the camera. The image was absurd. A clown standing on the ruins of a perfectly executed plan. A wave of something cold and sharp washed over him. It wasn't anger. Anger was a messy, inefficient emotion. It was disgust. A profound, soul-deep revulsion. This creature, this Deadpool, was not just an obstacle. He was an ideological poison. He was the personification of everything Chisaki despised: chaos, randomness, filth, and a complete lack of respect for order. He was a joke in the middle of a serious equation. He was a splash of garish, dripping paint on a masterpiece of monochrome perfection. He represented the disease of the world in its most concentrated, obnoxious form. This clown, Chisaki said, the word dripping with venom. He is an anomaly that cannot be permitted to exist. The plan is too delicate for such random variables. Find him. Study him. And when you understand what he is, erase him. Cleanse this mess from the board. Yes, overhaul, Nemoto said, bowing his head. Chisaki set the tablet down, his gaze distant. The heroes, with their predictable morals and telegraphed attacks, were a known quantity. But this was a different kind of sickness. A sickness of nonsense. And for a man like Kai Chisaki, there was nothing more terrifying than nonsense. Meanwhile, several miles away, the source of Chisaki's existential disgust was attempting to teach his protege the subtle art of dumpster diving. The dumpster is a hero's best friend, Deadpool lectured, perched on the edge of a large, foul-smelling metal container in a back alley. It is a treasure trove of tactical resources. A source of nourishment, and an excellent place to hide when your landlord comes looking for that security deposit you forgot to pay. Izuku stood a safe distance away, his nose wrinkled. The alley smelled of stale grease, wet cardboard, and urban despair. I really don't think we should be doing this. It's unhygienic? Nonsense. A little grime builds character. And a strong immune system. Deadpool rummaged around inside the dumpster, the sounds of clattering bottles and squishing refuse echoing in the small space. Aha! Pay dirt! He emerged triumphantly, holding up a slightly dented can of what appeared to be creamed corn and a newspaper from 3 days ago. See? Dinner and intel. 2 birds with one, rusty, garbage-covered stone. That can is probably teeming with botulism, Izuku said, his voice pleading. And the newspaper is old news. We have the internet. But does the internet have this delightful patina of mystery grease? Deadpool countered, wiping the can on his suit. I think not. Now, let's see what the word on the street is. He unfolded the newspaper, squinting at the headlines. Blah blah blah, political scandal, blah blah, All Might opens a new water park. Ooh, here's something. He pointed to a small article on the 3rd page. Izuku leaned in, hesitantly, to read it. The headline was innocuous: Distribution issues plague new energy drink. The article detailed how shipments of a popular new beverage called Trigger Up had been mysteriously disappearing across several wards. It was a minor business story, the kind of thing most people would skim past. But Izuku's analytical mind, now being unwillingly seasoned with a dash of paranoia, saw more. Trigger, he muttered to himself. That's a weird name for an energy drink. And the disappearances, they're happening in areas with known low-level villain activity. Could it be a cover? A distribution network for something else? Bingo! Deadpool snapped his fingers. Give the green-haired kid a prize. He's learning to read between the lines. Or, in this case, the mysterious stains. He tapped the article. Trigger. Like the drug. The quirk-enhancing stuff. Real nasty business. Boosts your power but fries your brain like an egg on Sunday morning. My gut says these things are related. Izuku's eyes widened. The trigger drug was a serious problem, a major focus for pro-heroes. If the Hasaikai were using a legitimate company as a front to move their product, it was brilliant and terrifying. We have to report this, Izuku said immediately, his hand already reaching for his phone. We need to tell Aizawa-sensei, the police. They can launch a formal investigation. Deadpool snatched the phone out of his hand. Whoa there, Dudley Do-Right. Let's think about this for a second. We go to the cops, what happens? They'll open a file. They'll assign a detective. They'll spend weeks getting warrants and navigating red tape. By the time they make a move, these Yakuza wannabes will have packed up shop and moved on. The trail goes cold. But that's the procedure. Izuku insisted. That's how it's done. Heroes work with the authorities. Yeah, and sometimes the authorities move at the speed of a constipated snail, Deadpool shot back. He hopped down from the dumpster, his tone growing more serious. Kid, look at me. I've got a bad feeling about this. A real someone's about to get their tragic backstory expanded kind of feeling. My internal monologue is screaming at me. The little yellow boxes are going nuts. Something is seriously wrong here. And if we wait for the guys in blue to figure it out, it might be too late. Izuku hesitated, torn. Everything in his training, everything All Might had ever taught him, screamed at him to follow the rules, to trust the system. But Deadpool's words, as chaotic as they were, rang with a certain undeniable truth. He had seen firsthand how slow official channels could be. So what do you suggest we do? Izuku asked, his voice barely a whisper. Deadpool's masked lenses crinkled into a grin. What do you think? We do our own investigation. A little covert ops. A smidgen of breaking and entering. A dash of light treason. It'll be a bonding experience. He tossed Izuku's phone back to him. The newspaper said the next big shipment is due at a distribution warehouse in the Docklands tonight. Guess where we're going? The Docklands were a stark contrast to the gleaming heart of the city. Here, the buildings were squat, rust-streaked warehouses, and the air tasted of salt, diesel, and neglect. The warehouse they were looking for was a massive, corrugated metal box sitting at the end of a deserted pier, bathed in the sickly yellow glow of a few security lights. Izuku and Deadpool were hidden behind a stack of shipping containers, observing the target. Izuku had his notebook out, sketching a quick layout of the area. Okay, he whispered, there are 4 guards on the perimeter, patrolling in predictable patterns. 2 more at the main entrance. I can see at least 3 security cameras. Our best point of entry is probably the roof. There's a series of ventilation shafts. If we can disable the cameras and time our approach between the guard rotations, we can get inside undetected. A solid plan, Deadpool whispered back. Logical. Efficient. Stealthy. A little boring, but solid. What's your plan? Izuku asked, bracing himself. Deadpool reached into one of his pouches and pulled out a small, brightly colored box. I call this plan special delivery. The box was from a company called Pizzala, a popular pizza chain. He clearly just bought it. You're going to use pizza? Izuku asked, completely baffled. Not just pizza, my boy, Deadpool said, a mischievous glint in his voice. Pizza, with extra sleeping powder on the pepperoni and a side of chaos. Before Izuku could protest, Deadpool strode out from behind the shipping containers, walking directly towards the 2 guards at the main entrance. He was holding the pizza box aloft like a sacred offering. Pizza delivery! He called out, his voice cheerful and non-threatening. The 2 guards, burly men in cheap suits with subtle bulges under their jackets, exchanged a confused look. They raised their hands, their quirks beginning to manifest. One's fist started to glow with a faint light, the other's skin took on a rocky texture. We didn't order any pizza, the rocky one growled. Get lost. Are you sure? Deadpool said, feigning confusion. The order was for, Mr. Super evil bad guys? Large pepperoni and anchovy, extra evil? The guards looked at each other again. Their job was hours of crushing boredom punctuated by moments of intense stress. The idea of a free, if strange, Pizza was undeniably tempting. "Let me see that," the glowing fist guard said, his suspicion warring with his hunger. He took a step forward. That was his mistake. Deadpool opened the box. Instead of a pizza, the inside was lined with a series of flashbang grenades, their pins all tied to a single string. With a flick of his wrist, Deadpool pulled the string. The world erupted in a flash of blinding white light and a deafening bang. The guards cried out, stumbling back, their vision and hearing completely overloaded. By the time they recovered, Deadpool was on them, delivering two swift, precise chops to the backs of their necks. They crumpled to the ground, unconscious. "See?" Deadpool said, kicking one of the guards gently. "Special delivery." He then proceeded to pull a slice of actual pizza from one of his pouches and began eating it. Izuku could only stare. The plan was idiotic. It was reckless. It should not have worked. But it had. It had worked perfectly. They slipped inside the warehouse. The cavernous space was filled with towering stacks of crates, all bearing the Trigger Up logo. Several forklifts were parked in the aisles, and in the center of the warehouse, a group of about 10 men were overseeing the loading of a large, unmarked truck. These were not simple thugs. They wore the same kind of tactical gear and plague masks Izuku had seen in the fragmented footage at Chisaki's headquarters. They were shy Hasaikai. "Okay," Izuku whispered, his heart pounding. "This is it. We need to find proof. Shipping manifests, samples of the actual drug, anything to link this to the Hasaikai." "Right. You do the quiet, sneaky, evidence-gathering thing," Deadpool whispered back. "I'll do the loud, distracting, what the hell is that thing?" What the hell is that thing?" Izuku asked nervously. Deadpool just grinned and pointed up. Following his gaze, Izuku saw a large industrial crane hanging from the ceiling, a massive electromagnet dangling from its hook, currently powered down. "Oh no," Izuku breathed. "Oh yes," Deadpool hissed with glee. While Izuku crept through the shadows of the towering crates, moving with a stealth he hadn't known he possessed, Deadpool made his way to the crane's control booth, a small glass box perched high on the wall. The operator was inside, engrossed in a manga. He never saw Deadpool slip in behind him. A moment later, the operator was slumped over his console, peacefully unconscious. Down on the floor, Izuku had found what he was looking for. A small, open crate set aside from the others. Inside, nestled amongst bottles of the energy drink, were rows of injector pens filled with a viscous, purple liquid. It was Trigger. He quickly snapped a few photos with his phone. This was the proof they needed. It was at that moment that all hell broke loose. With a loud clang, the massive electromagnet on the crane powered on, its surface glowing with a dangerous blue energy. It began to swing back and forth, controlled by a master of mayhem in the booth above. The Hasaikai members looked up in confusion and alarm. "Attention, Yakuza shoppers!" Deadpool's voice boomed over the warehouse's PA system, which he had apparently hotwired. "There is a sale on aisle 3. Everything must go, and by everything, I mean you, and by go, I mean flying through the air and sticking to my giant magnet of doom." The magnet swooped down. The Hasaikai members, wearing metal masks and carrying firearms, were perfect targets. Several of them were lifted off their feet, screaming as they were pulled through the air and stuck to the magnet with a resounding thwack. The remaining members panicked, opening fire on the control booth. Bullets sparked against the reinforced glass. "Ooh, you're making me angry!" Deadpool's voice boomed. "You wouldn't like me when I'm angry." "Actually, that's not true. I'm pretty much delightful all the time." He swung the magnet, now adorned with 3 flailing Yakuza, like a giant pendulum, using it to knock over a towering stack of crates. The crates tumbled down like dominoes, creating a barrier and scattering the remaining Hasaikai. Izuku knew this was his cue. The distraction was as chaotic as possible. Now he had to act. He saw 2 of the Hasaikai trying to get to the truck, their escape route. He burst from the shadows. "Stop right there!" They spun around, surprised to see him. They were expendable, low-level enforcers, but they were still dangerous. One of them had a quirk that let him shoot sharp, quill-like projectiles from his arms. The other's hands morphed into crude, hammer-like shapes. "It's just a kid," Quill Guy sneered. "Take him out." He fired a volley of quills. Izuku dodged, activating full cowling. He moved in, his mind racing. He didn't have to defeat them, just delay them. He remembered Deadpool's fight with the Velocity Syndicate. Chaos. Unpredictability. He didn't charge in a straight line. He leaped onto a stack of crates, using the uneven surface to launch himself at an odd angle. Hammerhand swung at him, but Izuku was already gone, pushing off another crate, a green blur of motion. He was fighting reactively, instinctively, not with a pre-planned strategy. He was using the environment, using their own momentum against them. It was messy, it was clumsy, but it was working. From his perch in the control booth, Deadpool watched with a critical eye. Not bad, kid. You're getting the hang of it. A little more flair, maybe a backflip. The judges love backflips. The chaos reached its peak when one of the Hasaikai members, a particularly large man, pulled out a grenade launcher. He aimed it at the control booth. Ooh, that's not playing fair, Deadpool's voice echoed. He did something to the crane controls. The magnet, with its human ornaments, suddenly disengaged. The 3 Yakuza members dropped from the ceiling, landing in a heap directly on top of the man with the grenade launcher. It was over. The Hasaikai grunts were unconscious, captured, or stuck to various warehouse surfaces. The truck was secured. The evidence was gathered. As the distant sound of sirens grew closer, Deadpool having anonymously tipped them off mid-fight, Izuku leaned against the crate, breathing heavily. He was bruised, he was tired, but he was strangely exhilarated. They had done it. A new presence made itself known. A single figure, stepping out from the deepest shadows of the warehouse. He moved with a quiet, deliberate grace that was utterly at odds with the chaos around him. He wore a dark, formal suit and the iconic beaked mask of the Hasaikai elite. It was one of the 8 bullets, the organization's most trusted and powerful enforcers. He had clearly been observing, waiting. He looked at the scene of devastation, his masked face betraying no emotion. He looked at the defeated grunts, at the swinging magnet, at Izuku, and then his gaze drifted up to the control booth, where Deadpool was waving down at him. His posture was calm, but his voice, when it came, was like the scraping of surgical steel on bone. Lord Overhaul was right, the man said, his voice cold and devoid of life. You are a disease. A filthy, chaotic stain. He took a single, deliberate step forward. My master has ordered me to cleanse it. The atmosphere in the warehouse shifted. The playful, chaotic energy of the fight vanished, replaced by a cold, sharp dread. This was not a grunt. This was not a thug. This was a true believer. This was a killer. And he was here to bring his own brand of sterile, lethal order to their messy, vibrant chaos.